Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hashtag Clocked In with me, your host, Jordan Edwards. I'm thrilled to have you tune in as we dive into the dynamic world of productivity, success, and stories of incredible individuals who've mastered the art of getting things done. Whether you're commuting, hitting the gym, or just relaxing at home, this podcast is the go-to source for inspiration and actionable tips to level up your productivity game. I'm on a mission to unravel the secrets of those who seem to effortlessly manage their time and achieve their goals. So if you're ready to clock in and unlock your full potential, you're in the right place. We've got a lineup of amazing guests, industry experts, and thought leaders who will share their insights and strategies to help us crush your to-do list and make the most out of every moment. Get ready to get inspired, motivated, and equipped with the tools you need to supercharge your productivity. This is Hashtag Clocked In with Jordan Edwards. Let's dive in. Chrissy Ford. She's a corporate dropout to founder and CEO of an 8-figure successful business. And we have you here today on the Clocked In podcast. So, Chrissy, how did you even come up with an idea to get to the point of 8 figures, which is over $10 million a year, which is incredible?
Oh, thank you so much. How did I come up with the idea? I like to say it's like the first truly spontaneous thing I ever did was Levo, because up to that point I had a plan for everything. And that was just sort of, I can't describe it. Like it's truly so random. I had an openness to DIY and natural products and things like that because I was personally a migraine sufferer that had been like cleaning with vinegar for years and stuff like that. But really it was just searching around Google in that arena, just wanting to make a product that hit all these trends of people caring more about their ingredients and being more conscious, and then kind of falling into this subset of people that are making a lot of their own, whether it's cooking like from scratch, like truly from scratch, like make your own peanut butter from scratch, or making things because you're trying to avoid ingredients. I just found that there was tons of online traffic and people talking about those things and no products and no brands. So I thought this is a really engaged install base to deliver some kind of product to. And I kind of backed into the idea for Levo because oil infusion is something that you can make so many different things. If you start with an infused ingredient, you could turn that into like skincare or a
Oh,
candle
really?
or food. Yeah.
So I've had past guests on, and when they talk about it, they talk about that like the lotions we use, the oils we use, everything we use affects us and causes us to act a certain way. So can you elaborate on what that really is? Are people like, are the different oils affecting us? Like, is there stuff that they're putting in it? Like, how did that even come to be? Because I know it's very prevalent nowadays for everyone who's really focusing on their health.
Yeah. I mean, I read about it, people talking about infused oils more than me having done it myself at first. And then I went to almost every specialty olive oil store that I could find in New York City where I was living at the time. And I discovered that like the section of the flavored oils were usually like an oil where they just drop the flavor in, like, and sometimes
Okay.
actually things like that. And they would come from a totally different supplier. So I was just kind of blown away. Like, you imagine that a blood orange infused olive oil is like, the beautiful orange peels were sitting in there. And it was so authentically like infused or flavored or something. But actually the process when I was like really digging into it more, I found that like all those stores bought it from the same supplier and they were sort of like artificially or like ethanol extracted, flavored, later. So that was kind of the beginning. And then I started noticing more and more that, not all essential oils are created equal. When something's flavored, like, and it actually tastes, it doesn't taste like the artificial version of something. It tastes like the authentic version of it, like the way at a fancy restaurant you'd get it. They're using like real lavender. And the way they're doing that
Yeah.
is like using it into an oil versus sort of artificial. So it's kind of like, it gets you away from just a level of processed things and kind of brings you to more back to basics. And yeah, that's kind of the idea.
It's fascinating because you start to experience it more and more when I don't know. It's been throughout my life where I'm starting to realize that you're like, the shampoo we use, the smells we have, the perfumes, the deodorants. They're like, don't use this, use this. So where are people at? Like, are these people all the way at the end where they're like who's usually the target customer? Because I know people are talking about it. I know they're hearing about it, but like who really is the customer?
Yeah, it runs the gamut. Like Levo is uniquely like 50-50 male female, really evenly spread across other demographics like age. The largest states are the coastal states. It kind of follows like socioeconomic norms in terms of where they are.
Yeah.
But generally hobbyists, like I've seen everything from a Harley Davidson fan to a cat person to like amateur chef at home or professional chefs really enjoy Levo as well. But they usually have some kind of a hobby where they're willing to spend the time and energy getting into making things, or they're
Yeah.
just, maybe a gadgety type person or someone who's like, maybe the type of person who picked up sourdough in quarantine or something as well. But yeah, it really is a wide spread, and that's made it challenging and fun from a marketing
Yeah.
perspective because you can't like rule number whatever about marketing is like don't try to appeal to everybody.
Yeah.
Although there
But
definitely is this like really wide crowd of people that are attracted to it that we try to speak to.
I would say that it is a wide crowd, but it's also a niche.
Mhm.
Like to me, I'm like on the cusp of learning about these things. So when I saw what you were doing, I was like, this is interesting. It's different to me. But I think for the audience, for everyone to realize is that if you have something that you think is a quote unquote niche or not enough people will know about it, Chrissy's here is a great example saying that she's done it, has a big business because like it, and it's a niche. And it's this thing of like, it's all these people and they align in a certain way. So like, don't be as scared because there's, like we talked about before, there's 7 to 8 billion people on the planet. Like you can find 1,000 people interested in your product. Like it's a good thing. And I'm saying that for the audience because it kind of opens up a lot of eyes and a lot of perspectives. Because sometimes we're like, we have to appeal to everyone. And it's like, no, like you can niche down. So
So
yeah, absolutely. So Chrissy, where's the origin of this? Where did this all happen? Were you just like, I'm done with school and now I want to experience this. How'd you get into this?
Um, I was in college and I like had a light bulb moment about the idea when I was searching Google, among other things, and I was a financial analyst at the time. So like looking at different reports of different trends, including things like East meets West, holistic medicine stuff, people wanting to take their own care into their own hands and avoiding things that they think might contribute to autoimmune diseases, like stuff like that. I was just sort of seeing all of that and the cannabis and hemp industry being an example to me of just herbalism at large, East meets West, preventative healthcare to many people, or at least to like, the sophisticated consumer there that has the purchasing power that's, walking around Whole Foods, that's kind of like sitting on the edge of natural care. So yeah, I was in college when I had that idea, and then towards the end of college, I was trying to rally like friends and people around me to care about it, which was a really mixed bag. Like I was a little too hot on that at the time. I actually had some like awesome connections out of business school that I totally burned by trying to be too forceful of like, get into this with me. Like I just want to do a thing. But I totally thought it was going to be on the side. Like I was really trying to convince people to get into it and to do it, but I wasn't willing to part with my, then front office investment banking job that I was intending to get because I wanted some level of personal security. So it ended up kind of hobbling along for 3-4 years while I was working and self-funding it. I like had some cash. I was like putting it right back into prototypes. I paid students at Parsons in the city to help me prototype some of the first Levos and things. I lit a lot of money on fire at a product design firm. I did all this stuff all on the side. And by by the end of that 3 to 4 year period, we filmed a Kickstarter video and I thought I was gonna go take it to a Kickstarter and have this whole funny campaign. And something about watching the video and like really imagining the campaign it dawned on me that like I wasn't going to be able to do this on the side. Like this is going to take, it feels janky was how I felt. I was like, it just doesn't feel right. So then I gave myself one more year and I said, if I can drum up, if I can like convince myself that I can raise a little outside money because I can't afford the tooling, like I had reached that point of finishing R&D and all of
Yeah.
that on my own dime. And then I was like, I can't write this tooling check. So if I think I can, get some outside capital to do that, then I'll quit my job. And that's kind of, so I actually like made fake business cards for Levo and showed up at like meetup.com events,
Yeah.
like that. And once people sounded like kind of interested and like it gave me the validation of like trying it on before I did it.
Yeah.
Then I kind of jumped in full time.
I yeah, I just want everyone to understand that it's not this I quit my job and then I started a business. It's I built as much as I could on the side because the thing that people don't realize is that there are steps and there are processes and there's product market fit and there's all these different things. And a majority of the time we're just like, I have an idea. I think I'm gonna quit. And it's like, hold your horses. And that's why I really like what Chrissy did there. She actually tested the market by going to these meetups and asking people, hey, this is an idea. What do you think? And I think that's so powerful because it costs nothing or very close to nothing. It's
Yeah.
just your time and it allows you to sit there and really just understand what people like, what might be confusing, where it makes sense, because you're learning as this is all going. And people think business is this whole, you got to dive right in. Yes, you have to burn the boats at some point. Yes, you got to do this. Yes, you also have to be financially fit. Otherwise, you don't think clearly.
Yeah.
So, because there's so many people that do the jump and then they're like, wait, I need money. So then they're like, I'm going to get a job and do this thing. And it's like, you're in the same place you were before.
Totally. It's, I like to tell other people I talk to who haven't, I'm all about supporting people. If you've got a great idea, I say like, go for it. Because like you said, Levo is an example of something pretty niche that really went somewhere. So I think with enough like persistence, you can pretty much do anything that you want to do. That's my personal belief. However, I think it's important that people go into the startup world and they understand that most of the people who start something have a lot of resources to begin with, one way or another. So it's very rare that you're rubbing sticks together to make fire. So if you know you're that person who has to drum up other people's interest and like really get some more support and rally resources around your idea, I think it's wise to be like very practical about what you're getting into because it takes longer than you think. Like anyone I know who's fundraised, it takes months. You have to become pro at it to like reduce that timeline. So if it's your first thing, I definitely agree that you should take some time and like really consider your transition before you do it, or you'll be really stressed out.
Yeah, and what people don't understand is that stressed out component, you show up differently in meetings. There's this undertone of desperation where it's like, I need this to work. Otherwise, and people are always like, do that. Like, that's good. And it's framework wise, mentally, it might not always be good for you. So it's just figuring out who you are and what's best for you, because there's sometimes where it just doesn't always work out the best. So how did you think about really that transition year? What, like, obviously you made the decision, but like what were you doing besides the meetups and those different things? Did you raise any money or you were just saving a lot more money, or how do you think about it financially?
I had a few meetings while I technically still had my other job. I had a few like meetings over coffee with potential investors, and I had gone to some events and talked about it as if I was doing it already.
Yes.
I didn't actually take anybody's money until then. I just went, that entire process was for me. It was just validation for me, and it was totally psychological. And then once I really quit, then I was able to spend even more time. Like at the time I was officing at WeWork actually, and I
Okay.
met so many other cool people, once I was really spending my days there. And like that actually led to, but I was psychologically ready for that, to go meet, to really dive in. So I kind of test drove things. Like those investors that I, talked to at that time didn't end up being the people that, ultimately invested in the company. But I was ready for it because I had broken the seal in a way,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that brings up another really good point that what a lot of people don't understand is that you need reps. So you need reps in everything. So that's like you need reps to get good at lifting weights. You need reps to get good at getting investors for your business. So how do you get better? You get some reps. I need reps to get better at podcasts. Like the more you do something, the better you get at it. So my point being here is that if you're able to practice and actually get valid reps, and it's not like you're having a coffee meeting with your dad or your mom, like you're having
Right,
real people where they actually view you as a real person and you're like, yes, I am. And you're stepping into that, then they're like, okay, keep me
right.
updated. I'm interested in this. This is something, and that's where you get that validation of, yes, I can do this. It
Yeah.
is possible. Because there's so many times where we just don't get the reps and we don't even know what it's like. So I would challenge the audience that if you have some idea or something you want to do, get the first rep, get the first 5 reps, see what happens. You'll probably fail, but at least you know you're trying and you might enjoy the process.
Another important thing that I was thinking about as you're talking is it wasn't just about the fundraising. There's also the like making the thing and doing the business. So I was also simultaneously proceeding on like trying to finish the design, which in hardware is potentially a never-ending cycle, which is why people fear hardware a lot.
Yes.
But I was really trying to like see a prototype come out of a factory that looked like what I wanted, basically at that time. And I knew what I learned in the beginning, just burning through money, was like, I'm not going to achieve that through middlemen, basically. Like, I was just going to spend way too much money. So I was like, how do I get closer and closer to the source? So I did do a trip to China at the time.
Oh, wow.
First person, I was trying to model, I didn't have I didn't grow up with entrepreneurs in my family or around me. My peer group from business school was like very corporate and finance oriented. So I didn't have a lot of examples, but in that sort of trying it on lap before I really went for it, and talking about it more, I did meet other people who knew people who were, had been in China for 30 years and made 100 different products and things like that. So I started to model how did they do it? What does it look like? Like, what's the commonality between people who have been successful making physical products? And it's like they've been there a lot. They have support, like boots on the ground. They have like relationships that they've earned, things like that. So I was like, how do I do that? Because it felt like at the time, everything was a broker and everything was like, I couldn't get directly like behind the wall. So I ended up just flying there, with the first person who would take me on a trip and like just slugging through it and going and seeing it. So that was all happening in parallel.
Wait, so
And
you literally took off days from your job to go to China?
at the very end, I used all my PTO. Yeah. And it was a combination of startup week in Colorado and my first trip. Yeah.
That's incredible. And what was that experience like? Because I mean, you tell it and everyone's like, what? That makes no sense. But it's the truth is that if you want something bad enough, you have to be irrational about it. You have to make it into reality. So what do you mean by that there was all these middlemen and broker? Do people represent the different factories? Or what was it exactly?
In hard goods, yeah, there's a whole world. If you call like 1-800, I have an invention, or you start Googling, like, what do I do with my invention? There are a lot of agencies that are looking for you to spend a lot of money. And some of them are great. But for me, like, paying it out of pocket and trying to be really scrappy about it. And for anyone who's trying to do it that way, it's not tenable. If
Yeah.
you have an idea of a certain complexity, like a medical device or something like that, like you wouldn't be able to just kind of, I call it pretengineering. Like you wouldn't have been able to stick handle people and ultimately get to your product. You would have had to find like specialists and whatever and need that budget and raise for it in advance. It's just very difficult. So yeah, that experience for me was adrenaline fueled and just kind of like taking every next, for me, it was just being in a mode. And I still am in this mode ever since I started it. Is just like taking whatever next step I can see and just doing it. Like just if it's a step forward, or and even if it's just for learning, like you're not positive of the outcome, like just taking it and doing it and being in it. Because if you just intellectualize it and you're kind of sitting behind it and you're just imagining what it would be, you're certainly wrong.
So
Once you get into it, it's going to be different. So the more you can like actively learn and be involved, like I can't imagine just having sat and thought about the idea for another year and just perfected a fantasy in my mind and then
yeah,
try to go do it and be confronted with a different reality. And the other thing about agencies that I would add really quick is just that whether it's an agency or it's a particular person or mentor or advisor or someone, anyone who has like 100% of the answer and says like, this is exactly the way to do it. If it's your idea, then it's inevitably going to be, you're going to have to find your own way. There is no easy button and no answer if it's your unique idea. If you're trying to do
yeah,
something like a very proven model or like something that a lot of people have done before and you're trying to do the exact same thing, then sure, there might be a formula to follow. But if you are pioneering your own original idea, then you have to just start taking steps because you're going to end up finding your own way. Nobody has the exact answer for you. So
yeah. And I think what was really powerful there was you saying that essentially you're like, I had these fears. Maybe it was fear of failure, fear of rejection, two biggest fears, and you just took action. Because the truth is, when you take action and you know your big picture directional awareness that you want to go, then you're able to accomplish so much more because you're actually going in the direction. Like for myself, I've had many of time, like I was telling you about the trip before. Like I'm traveling around Europe for 7 weeks. What was my action? We booked the flights. Okay. A flight in and a flight out. That was it. And it's like, okay, what was your next step? We got a place to stay. Cool. What's the next one? And you just start figuring it out as you go, but you can never predict it until you start experiencing that. And that's what the beautiful thing about life is that when you put yourself out there and you go after your goals, you're able to see progress and see these wins. But that doesn't happen without overcoming that fear of failure and that fear of rejection and taking action. So I want to commend you on that. I think that's amazing.
thank you so much. Yeah, you're the edge, like as you step into entrepreneurship, if you're not pushing yourself to the edge will come to you. And you will be confronted with it one way or another. So to me, it's like proactively finding the edge and knowing where it is and walking up to it because that's growth and that's new things. And I can identify times where I wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
It's reflected in the performance of the company. Where we weren't growing or progressing in a productive way because I wasn't like pushing myself in there's always a new area. Like as soon as you conquer, like for me, it was, manufacturing and getting some of that done. And it's like, I didn't expect to have to learn so much about marketing, but guess what? That's like 90% of what I had to learn after that. I thought I had kind of gotten over a hill and then I just found a new one that had its
And
own world.
well, that's the really other challenging thing that you're facing is that as an entrepreneur or anybody, you just have to constantly learn new skill sets. And then you have to employ people to cover those new skill sets, and then you move on to the next one. And it's just a very challenging process. So for you, how was that China visit the first time? Because I know, and then we'll move over to the marketing and how you think about that. But like, how was that first China visit? Because I can imagine that scale, like you're you have this one identity of yourself of like, I'm in finance, I do this. And then you have this other identity of like, I'm a founder. And it's like neither of those cross China. Like neither flying all the way around the world to go there. Like, what was that even like?
The first trip was pretty miserable, I'll be honest. It was not easy. It was kind of, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't really have an expectation, but I was like, oh man, is this really what I'm going to be doing for the next couple of years? Like, I was pretty concerned. But I did do a couple smart things at the time, which was like, I knew enough about what I had heard, which like I borrowed designer clothes from my aunt, and dressed myself up. The
Okay.
corporate job was actually a really big benefit because there was some value and some credibility that I had, like talking about what I had done over there. I instantly learned the value of, I had heard in business school that in Asia, culture is more about being in person and less about contracts, but it was immediately obvious to me that like, I'm going to spend a lot of time here. This is not going to get done virtually. This is not going to get done on paper. This is an experience.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, in the beginning, I think I was just with the wrong people. My first try over there, the people I went with, the factory I visited, everything about it is like night and day different than my reality over there now, which has now expanded countries as well. But just in general, like, first time, I met something and then I ended up loving it. Like I've done nearly 30 trips at this point.
Oh,
I was a
wow.
leader for a while. Yeah, I mean, that's how I got it done without being technical.
Yeah.
Was just learning as much as I possibly can about the technical stuff and basically project managing it and just forcing it out the door. It was just sort of like a sheer, like I said, adrenaline infused, like this is happening, hell or high water sort of a thing. But yeah, I think I ended up really, I've had so many positive experiences. I've got people that I've worked with now that I would consider family. And on that first trip, I never would have seen it that way. I never would have been able to see it going in that direction. But now I have some of my most transformative working relationships are there.
Yeah.
So it really spun around, and it was so many chance introductions that led to me meeting the right people. A
Yes.
combination of chance and just sort of putting it out there and just turning over leaves and turning over leaves. But ultimately, like the string of introductions that got me to the right place was pretty random and lucky, I'd say. But yeah, that's just a testament to sticking with it, I guess.
Absolutely. Because I mean, there's so many times where you just got to put yourself out there. And like Chrissy was saying, that the first time she went, it wasn't the right people, it wasn't that. But like the thing is, you don't know any different. You haven't had any experiences. You don't know what people are like. And the only way you can get that experience is through experiencing and talking to people who've been to China, but like still doesn't do it. You still got to experience it in real life for yourself. So what was the way to like how'd you know when it was time to go over like 30 trips sounds like a lot. Like
A
could you have
lot.
done this quicker or like what
Oh
ended
yeah,
up
I was
happening?
just I found a cheap flight. It was not a great flight pattern, but it was a really cheap flight. It was like under $700, and I was going every 3 weeks. I
Really?
between and I also like to get Levo one out the door, and the earliest employees would remember this because one of them stayed with me for 3 weeks there. I basically said, like, this trip, I'm staying until they're in the container.
Really?
When the container is full, I will leave. So my presence will be here watching this, go down
Operation.
until they're there. And it ended up being a 3 week long trip to really push it. Had I not just decided to stay there, I think it could have taken an extra like 2 months. And at this point, that was when I had pre-orders, like anxiously awaiting their first Levo.
Yes.
So that I was like, this has to happen. Like, I don't want to wait anymore. So I just kind of camped out.
So I yeah, and I mean that's super important for people to realize that it's like if you can when you stay somewhere longer or when you do things more often, it compresses time. So how long was your normal trip? Like a week, it sounds
Yeah,
like?
it was I would leave Denver at this point I've moved to Denver. I'm not in the city anymore. And I would leave Denver at like 6 a.m. on a Monday, and I'd be back at 5 p.m. on Friday. And I had about 2 full working days there. It was
So
nuts.
just think about that. That's 2 days. But when she said I stayed for 3 weeks, 21 days, but condensed all that time and it stops those travels and it goes, we're getting this done. It makes a massive difference when you can immerse yourself in something because there's so many times where it's like we just don't it might have taken you 50 reps to like 50 working days in China to get a product.
Right.
If you do two a week, once a month, that's half a year. Like, you know what I mean? And people don't realize that if you can just immerse yourself in things, it can make things so much better because you're going so much quicker. You're building rapport with them. They start to trust you. You start to know them better. And it's like, I really appreciate you sharing that because there's not like, these are the early days. This is what it looks like. It's not always the same for everyone, but you want to build a product and you want to own it. Like, this is what it's like.
Yeah,
So you,
like if something is the constraint, like that, there's this idea of this like theory of constraint, like finding the constraint. Where is it? So at that time, the constraint was some of the manufacturing elements and like all the little things that have to come together for it to like safely be in a box where it's not going to get damaged and shipped. And so I think it also inspires when you really do a sprint like that and you immerse yourself in like why the constraint exists, and have empathy for the people that are getting all of that together and try to understand it more. It led to me learning so much more and such a appreciation for all the detail. I mean,
Yeah.
amount that has to come together for even a relatively simple product in your home to get to you is a lot. There's a lot
And
of. I had a bigger appreciation process too.
for sure. But then that also makes you sit there and realize like, hey, valuable. Like, and it works. This is valuable. Like, of course, I'm not going to charge the first person what I think it's really worth because I can't account for all the 30 trips I went on. But you start to realize you're like, you get more confidence in yourself when you're doing these types of trips and when you're booking the things and you're putting the money out there because there's so many times where we all want to be cheap and hold our money and it's like, I can't share with anyone. And that's okay for times. But when you're building a business, like you gotta do what it takes. And that's sometimes really investing in yourself and really seeing the product through and realizing that entire process because you're going to become an expert in it, whether you like it or not,
Yeah. Yep. Definitely.
which I think is amazing. So when did you start to have final trust? And when did you know that you have trust in people when you were like, okay, we're able to accelerate this now? Like we don't have to go over there as much.
Um, Ultimately, on the third try with a different manufacturer, and like I said, some luck on who I got introduced to along the way. They expressed their interest and they said, we want to get behind this with you. And they became a partner. So
Oh, awesome.
like I was like alone in it for a while, and then you start attracting people that are willing to get behind it. So I had that, and then at this, like I kind of had that expression from a manufacturing partner, which is so powerful for product companies. I mean, like so many great companies, the relationship they have with their supply chain is like the defining quality in a lot of ways. I mean, it's like so impactful to your bottom line
Wow.
and financials and like getting any kind of terms from them and just having and the quality of your product. I mean, like just them really caring and it not being transactional, it being a little more like transformative and like a real relationship where both sides are supporting each other is like so powerful. So I achieved that kind of like, I'll call it good juju or sort of like goodwill between us. And then at the same time, I had luck strike me again, and the perfect mentor fell into my lap. And he had, 30 years of China experience and was an engineer and was a CEO and all these things and got on flights with me and went. And then I feel like I got a much more sophisticated version of what I was doing. Like I kind of got the momentum that I needed and like the spirit of everything was in the right direction. And then with mentorship and help, I was able to, make like more technical agreements and get to another level of detail and precision and sophistication with the relationship that and defining more things that I couldn't see myself, like avoiding mistakes that were going to happen. Like, let's define this now for when this inevitably happens.
Yeah.
I all came from mentorship, and that was another thing that was just so amazing and changed my life. Like someone who became family to me. So yeah, that was also very helpful. Like I think I would have scraped my knees a lot more had I not also simultaneously had a mentor be like, okay, you have this. Now let's actually like, put a bow on it and make it,
Yeah.
sophisticated.
Which I think is incredible because you
Yeah.
realize the people who have been there before can help you along the way. And then what you were saying about the manufacturer joining you is so powerful because otherwise they one day they could be like, hey, price has tripled. And you're like when COVID happened, you're like, price has tripled. What do you mean price has tripled? I can't do prices tripled. But if they're on the same side, then they'll like try to accommodate and try to help you out, make it work, where it's a team dynamic, which I think is so amazing. So, what would you say as we're winding down? what would you say to someone who's like looking into entrepreneurship or looking forward to just taking their next adventure? What would you recommend to them?
Um, I liked what you said earlier about reps, or you've said a few times about reps. There's something I heard at some point in my life about Group A and B are both trying to make pottery, and Group A is told make as many pots as fast as you can, and Group B is told make one perfect pot. And Group A that was doing as many as fast as they can made prettier pots by the end of it because of iterating. So I think that for me, and it's not easy, I have really bad days where I'm really hard on myself because I haven't figured it out yet, or I messed a million things up. Or sometimes you're living in mistakes, like what's happening for you today actually were things that you were doing 5 years ago, so sometimes
Yeah.
you have to get clear on what's going on and why. But I think overall through everything, if you're just continuing to iterate and taking steps forward, then I do believe deeply that there's success for you out there. But it's an expectation to really sit on that concept and be prepared for that. And if you're ever sitting on your hands, that's the one thing that's not the right thing to do. There's never nothing to do. So that would be my main advice, is if you're not iterating and growing, looking for the edge and taking the next steps, then something's off. And maybe you're
Yeah.
not fully committed yet. Maybe your heart's not in it. Maybe something's going on that's keeping you from wanting to do that. But that's a dangerous game. I feel like, you can avoid a lot of really epic failures if you just keep going.
Yeah. I mean, you're saying it how it is. It's when you're speaking, it kind of makes me think of like there's these people who kind of sit there and they'll be like, oh, like, how was your day? And it was like, oh, like, didn't really have meetings or didn't really have this or didn't have that. And it's like, make meetings. It's like, make stuff happen, call people, make it happen. And like, I really love that because it is take constant action, do the things that are going to make the difference. So, with the audience today, I think you guys know what Chrissy says. You got to take action today on whatever your goal is and make it as small as it is to get those early wins. I think that's absolutely incredible. So, Chrissy, where can people learn more about you, Levo, and everything you got going on?
Levooil.com, which is LEVOOIL.com. It's the main site. Go check it out. There's a really entertaining Levo Love Club group on Facebook of a lot of the power users, which is a cool way to see if you're curious about a brand that's got a community element or like a very engaged customer. That's an interesting way to see it if you're looking at it from that perspective. So yeah, check us out and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I love talking to people who have an idea and want to do something and helping them see the next step. Sometimes it just takes an extra set of eyes. So I'm always here to support and help people on that journey as well. And yeah, that's how you find me.
That's fantastic. I'll put all that in the show notes. Thank you. Thank you for reaching the end of the podcast. For that, we'll give you a complimentary coaching session in the link below with Edwards Consulting. Hope to see you there and have a great day and keep clocking in.